Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, it's your good buddy Sean Bock with 24/7 and CBS Sports, beat writer covering the Iowa Hawkeyes. Sean will be joining us here momentarily on the air, on the screen. Sean, first and foremost, what a week or last 4 days it's been for Penn State as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, October 14th, leading into the Penn State Iowa game at Kinnick Stadium, 6 o'clock kick. So, Sean, my how the world turns, my how the mighty have fallen from the penthouse to the outhouse or to the cellar for James Franklin out of a job. And Sean, I don't think it's any secret. Yeah, Penn State made the CFP last year, had Notre Dame beat, but gave that game away last year. Had Oregon beat, lost in overtime in Happy Valley 3 weeks ago, then lose at UCLA, come back home and lose in unhappy Valley to Northwestern last weekend. James Franklin out of a job now. Terry Smith head coach. No secret, Sean, that the demise of James Franklin was his lack of quality wins against top 10 or top five teams.
Yeah, that's been kind of the norm. I mean, I think there was a stat where James Franklin coming into the last two or before the last 2 weeks was 44-0 or something like that against unranked teams during his tenure at Penn State. And I mean, but that glaring stat was the 2 of 20 or 2 of 21, whatever he was against ranked opponents or top 10 opponents. I'm not sure exactly which one it was. I think it was top 10, but yeah, and that's one of those things too that makes this job so interesting come this offseason because you have a fan base who has kind of gotten a taste of what it's like to be near the top, not necessarily at the top. And all the coaches available, all the coaches that are likely going to be available, haven't really been able to make it to that point, or really guy like outside of Kurt Signetti, which I don't think he's going to leave Indiana. I think that that situation is perfect for him, and he's in a perfect place. But some of these other coaches that you hear about, like they haven't proven that they've gotten to that point or can get to that point. And while there's a really small like pool of those coaches that have gotten to that point, it's still just like if you're a Penn State fan, you're kind of in a place where you're taking a bet on a guy that would be your next hire. You don't really, there's not really like a sure thing of this candidate pool outside of maybe Signetti. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting spot. Like I get it. You had to fire James Franklin. It was getting really toxic, getting really messy, and it's kind of been talked about for the last couple of years. But for them to finally rip the Band-Aid off, I think it came at the right time. But man, this cycle is just not super appealing to me. If you're a Penn State fan, you want to get to that national championship level.
Let's talk now about Terry Smith coming in to replace James Franklin as head coach of Penn State, facing the Hawkeyes this weekend again. They are 3-3. The Hawk and 0-3 in the Big Ten. Go figure. With the Hawkeyes 4-2 overall, 2-1 in the Big Ten. The thing I love about this, Sean, is you take a look at what Terry Smith brings to the table. Not saying he'll be a candidate because he has no head coaching experience except high school, but he played at Penn State. He's been an associate head coach there for the last 11 years, defensive backs coach as well, and a coordinator or a consultant before that. So he's got Penn State coursing through his veins. Then, of course, you talk about Drew Aller, the star quarterback for Penn State, out with an ankle injury for the rest of the year. Got hurt in that Northwestern game. Now Ethan Drunkemeyer, a redshirt freshman, or Grunkemeyer, excuse me, is the starting quarterback. And I'm not sure I'd want to be him coming into a black and gold out on Saturday night game at Kinnick Stadium. But good luck to the young man.
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult first start for him. And Kirk Ferentz mentioned earlier today too that there's very limited tape on him. I think he's played 28 snaps this year or something like that. I think he's attempted 16 passes, and the one play that he did have against Northwestern was the one that where they came up short on that designed run on 4th and short. So that's going to be one of the challenges. But I think you look at this Penn State team, and yes, kind of one of the knocks with this group has been the play calling and getting guys the ball and places where they can really thrive. But there's still a lot of talent on this Penn State team, and I think this that's going to be one of the challenges for Iowa this week. Is Kirk Ferentz said it earlier today that there's still a lot of talent up and down like the lineup. Like just because they haven't performed up to stuff the last couple of weeks, and just have lost to some of those teams in the Big Ten doesn't mean that they're going to come in and fold. Like they're going to come in, they're going to want to beat the brakes off of you after their head coach got fired because you heard it from them too earlier today. Penn State players they feel a responsibility for having their head coach fired, and that's partly true. Like because you haven't really performed or executed, but I think there was also numerous things with this team where either it's whether it's undisciplined execution, like I said, or just kind of making some mistakes that have been really costly. And I think there are ways that Iowa can, benefit from that and potentially, sneak up on a team like Penn State and, pull off an upset. But, it's one of those things that I continue to hear about from people too. It's like you think about the Penn or the UCLA situation where they fired their head coach, UC or Penn State comes to town and UCLA beats the brakes out of Penn State and, just kind of dominates them, right from the jump. And I think that's really going to be important for Iowa too, to be able to get off to that fast start, that quick lead, like they did against Wisconsin and kind of impose their will. But Penn State, I mean, like I said, from a talent standpoint, is still a very good group in that regard. They just have been able to place the pieces together and put together a consistent performance against a power or against a Big Ten opponent. And Iowa is still vulnerable, I think, too, against this Penn State team, considering all the talent that they have. And is Mark Gronowski 100%? That's another thing too. Like, yes, there were some, times where he looked fine against Wisconsin last week, but his mobility, I think, still in some places was a little different. And Nico, the quarterback for UCLA, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his last name. He tore up Penn
Imalieva.
State's.
I'll help you out.
Yeah,
Imalieva, and I think that's right.
he tore up Penn State's defense with his ability to run, and Mark Gronowski has that ability to run, but they're different running styles and they're different types of mobility. So I don't know how much that's going to be there, but yeah, it's definitely a game where I mean it stinks because the hype is not as much as it was during the preseason, but it's still a game that's going to be pretty hard fought and close. I think, like no matter where the teams are ranked, especially Penn State.
Sean, it's really, you bring a couple of great points there. And let's not forget on Iowa's defense, they better have a watch out for Ross, the transfer from Troy last year. If you remember
Yeah.
how he ran all over, or excuse me, caught the ball and ran all over the Hawkeyes, got behind him and long touchdown catches. Did Kirk Ferentz mention anything else about injuries, other players? You mentioned Gronowski, that KF talked about him today during the player availability and the coaching availability for the press today as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, October 14th. Anything else jump out at you from Kirk Ferentz or the players today?
Yeah, it sounds like Jazzy and Patterson, TJ Washington won't be ready to go on Saturday. They obviously didn't play against Wisconsin, but it sounds like they won't be able to play against Penn State either. But Kamari Moulton and Xavier Williams, and then true freshman Nathan McNeil had a pretty good day running the football. I thought that was probably Iowa's best game running the football from the running backs. Starting Mike, Jaden Harrell's not going to go. I thought Jaden Montgomery did a pretty good job in his place against Wisconsin, albeit that's Wisconsin. Penn State's going to be a much different test with their running backs, especially Katron Allen and their offensive line, too. They have a couple NFL guys on the offensive line. So those were the three names that stood out to me in terms of like who's not going to be available. But one thing that really popped in my head when Kirk Ferentz was talking about it was Reese Vanderzee. I mean, he came back against Wisconsin and had a pretty solid game. I mean, 3 catches for 29 yards. And I mentioned this yesterday on another radio show. I think it was KXNO that it seems like the last couple of years, Iowa wide receivers, when they get injured and they come back from an injury, it takes them some time. Like it takes them a couple games to even get the ball thrown their way. But for Vanderzee to get 3 catches and 29 yards against Wisconsin in his first game back, I think that's a really good sign for what he can become. And it was also interesting to me because Kirk mentioned him in that group with like Zach Lutmer and TJ Hall as guys who have really accelerated, the last year or so. And what they've shown in practice. And Kirk said that a couple NFL personnel that have come to practices and games have been like, "Hey, who's this guy? Like, who's number 15?" And Bannersy's really opened some eyes too, and I think that could be a really, really positive thing with opening up the passing attack a little bit more and giving Mark Gronowski kind of that bigger safety valve at the outside receiver spot.
Let you and I come back. We'll talk some Hawkeye men's basketball. We've got the Hawks covered, hopefully, for Penn State. Hopefully, another big victory for the Hawks. So, Sean, if you're ready to go for another segment, let's do it after this break. You ready to go?
I'm always ready, Dave.
I love it, Sean. Yes, you are. For Sean Bock, again, a Hawkeye beat writer for 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports. I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. We'll be back with more in just a few moments.
Hawkeye is brought to you by Better Edge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on Better Edge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kajewski, Better Edge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at betteredge.com/Hawkeyed and get $10 to start winning more today. Better Edge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. In a moment, you'll see our good buddy Sean Bock joining us on the screen again. Sean, kind enough to do two segments with us today, as he usually does when he's on this show every couple of weeks, talking Hawkeye football, now Hawkeye men's basketball. Don't forget, as we close out the show in the third and final segment, in our sports betting segment, with our good buddy Mike Palm, VP of Operations from Circa, and an Iowa native. So always look forward to talking to Mike as well. So, Sean, you cover the Hawks at 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports, beat writer there. So we talked football. Let's get to basketball. As we record this on Tuesday afternoon, October 14th, Media Day tomorrow, Hawkeye Media Day for men's basketball on Wednesday, October 15th. But last week, you were in Chicago or the Chicago suburbs covering Big Ten Media Day. I'm going to step out of the way, let you talk all things Hawkeye men's basketball with the incoming new head coach, Ben McCollum, Bennett Sturts, all Big Ten preseason already. Sean, I'll tell you, there's a lot of excitement for this team, and they haven't even tossed the ball in the air yet. So let's talk about them, please.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of excitement about this team, a lot of encouragement. Anytime you get a head coach that did a really good job in the offseason is able to generate the excitement that Ben McCollum and this group did. And, considering McCollum's past and his success throughout and consistency the last couple of years, no matter where he's been at, whether that's Northwest Missouri State or Drake, it's definitely a plus. But this is going to be the toughest challenge yet. This is going to be where they have to step up. And one of the things that Drake team was able to beat a couple of high major teams last year. I still think that if Ben McCollum and Grant McCaslin, the Texas Tech head coach, weren't best friends, that Drake probably could have won that game and advanced to the Sweet 16. But yes, he's got that core that he's had at Drake and a couple of those guys. So they'll be without a couple of other dudes that they had in last year's team, but they bring in some pretty good transfers now, Vero Fulgaris and Brendan Housen. But this is going to be a big step up for this team just to do it on a nightly basis. And that's going to be where I'm most interested with this team because I think they'll be able to keep up offensively. I mean, with the outside shooting that they have and the amount of shooters that they have, I think the spacing is going to be a lot better. And when you have one of the best guards in the country in Bennett Starts, excuse me, that's going to be something for success, and that's going to set you up well for success. But the Big Ten, I think, from my standpoint, I mean, since going to 18 teams, yes, was it last year was the first year or the year before
Yes.
that? Last year was the first year.
Well, and now all the teams qualified for the Big Ten postseason. This will be the
Yes.
first year for that instead of 15. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to
Yes.
jump in for that.
This Big Ten is probably as deep and just like, I mean, obviously it's top heavy with a team like Purdue, and I think Purdue's kind of in a league of its own up there. But I think in terms of depth, like this is probably the deepest league. And I mean, even with some of the teams at the bottom, like I think Penn State has pieces that can beat you on certain nights. I think Minnesota has pieces. Rutgers will be interesting with their group, and I know they're going to probably be near the bottom of the Big Ten. But I mean, we saw last year. I thought that the Big Ten last year was incredibly deep, but this year it's going to be even deeper, and I think there's going to be even more talent at the top with some of these other teams, and it's going to be interesting to see how Iowa combats that because I think they're in a position where I've said it on this show multiple times where they're going to have a system and they're going to have a team that can win in multiple ways. You're not just going to have to score 100 points like it felt at times during the last regime to win basketball games. But I think this step from, it's going to take time, I think. Like, I think Iowa is going to be a good team. I think they're going to be able to compete in the Big Ten, but there's going to be some bumps, I think, with this group too. And, I think, like I said, with McCollum, it sets you up better for the future. He's going to be a really good X's and O's program builder, culture builder. I think they're going to be good at building rosters too. And he's a good recruiter. He's got a staff that can recruit really well. But the Big Ten is a different animal on a nightly basis. And I think that jump is going to be significant for this team and, for this program this year. And I think, like I said, I projected them to finish in the top half of the Big Ten, like around 8 or 9. I could see a scenario where they're around like 10, 11, 12, something around there too. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of those unknowns. Like I think this team is going to get better as the year goes on, and the ability to win games in different ways is going to be a big plus for them too. But man, it's going to be a really intriguing season because I mean, I feel like I have a feel for this team, but I don't really know if I do.
Well, that's how, again, we haven't even tossed the ball up in here. Until they do that, then you will. But, it's interesting,
Right.
Sean, when you talk about preseason, we take a look at head coach Matt Painter and his Purdue Boilermakers, preseason #1 nationally. And again, ball hasn't even been tossed up in the air yet when we were talking about Bennett Sturts being preseason All Big Ten. So Purdue is your #1 preseason pick so far in college basketball. Sean, it's also interesting to note we talk about Cooper Koch is the only holdover from the Fran McCaffrey regime from last year. And of course, I've had his dad, J.R. Koch, on this show with Kent McCausland and teammates back in the heyday of Tom Davis and the last Hawkeye team to go Sweet 16 and or beyond. And that was another century in 1999, Sean. It wasn't even the 2000s. So I know Cooper and the guys are aware of that. I don't want to cloud their judgment with that, but you've gotten me very inside information on Cooper Koch back in the day during the recruitment and when he came in to play for the Hawkeyes, and then having his dad talking to JR, a former Hawkeye great and a legacy pick Cooper Koch is. I hope big things for Cooper coming off the injury last year, so I hope he can fit into this Ben McCollum system. Any updates on what you see from Cooper so far, or what are you hearing, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I played in a golf outing with JR and Cooper this summer, so that was JR was on one. He was a ringer for us. So if he's playing well, if Cooper's playing like that this season, then that's a big plus. But yeah, McCollum talked about Cooper last week at Big Ten Media Days, and he admitted that the adjustment for Cooper was not, super smooth when he first got here and when he first started out. I mean, you're going from a new system, like a coach that didn't really recruit you coming out of high school, really no relationship at all. Coming out of high school, it's a completely new system. You have to, be able to deal with the physicality and the uptick of focus on the defensive side of the floor and just like a new offensive system too, and a new motion and, everything like that, like a new teammates. Like there's just so much that goes into it. And it was an adjustment for Cooper, but Cooper's been able to really, come into his own the last couple of months. It sounds like he's been shooting the ball better. He's more comfortable. He's like, I think Bennett Sturts was the one that said that Cooper's doing a lot more playing than thinking. And I think that's one really positive trait that, for any younger guy or just any like college athlete in general, if you could just play on the floor and just not have to think about, oh, I need to be in this spot, that spot, you can react more and you can, do more than that takes up more of your energy when you're reacting instead of thinking all the time and then reacting. So, and I mean, a big part of Cooper's game too is the ability to shoot the three from the outside. And I mean, there's big skill, like he's got skill to him too. Like he's comfortable putting the ball on the floor. He's a good passer. He's a high IQ guy where McCollum mentioned that he's really taken the big steps this offseason was in the weight room and being more physical. And, instead of like playing against physicality or like kind of going away from it, he's the one initiating that. He's the one, being physical, initiating contact and also defense too, just understanding defensive principles and, the different things that they do. And, like I've said before, the attention to defense and just like everything that goes into that defensive principles and fundamentals is a big focal point for this program now, and it wasn't in the last regime.
I really appreciate you and Sean taking us inside, not just the team itself and some of the players, but getting to know Ben McCollum a little bit better. And there is room for excitement and reason for excitement in Iowa City. I know it's still football season, Sean, and the Hawks have a lot left to do on the football field. But thanks for getting us ready for basketball as well and doing double duty today. It is always great to see you. There he is, folks. Sean Bock, Hawkeye insider, but also beat reporter for CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports. Sean, my friend, as always, thanks for taking the time. Good to talk to you, and we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for having me as always.
Truly my pleasure as always, and likewise back at you. So for Sean Bock, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. I'll be back with more to close out the show with Mike Palm in our sports betting segment, VP of Operations from Circus Sports and an Iowa native. Back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman from Mershman Seeds. Substitutions cost you money. Why take their seconds when you can have our first choice? Here's Ben Pieper to tell you more about Mershman Power Core Enlist corn.
We are way ahead of Big Seed on this one. This corn has 4 different post-herbicide tolerances, multiple modes of action for above-ground pests, and it is some of the highest-yielding corn genetics that are out on the market today.
If you're one of the many that got substituted on your corn hybrid last spring, contact your local Mershman Seeds dealer today and ask them about Power Core Enlist corn. From Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. In a moment, you'll see our good buddy Mike Palm, VP of Operations and Iowa native. He's out in Vegas. So, Mike, let's talk some Hawkeye football. This Penn State game upcoming as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, October 14th. Mike, 3 weeks ago, last time you were on the show with me, this line has moved because James Franklin moved drastically because Penn State loses an overtime game in Happy Valley to Oregon. And then they lose to UCLA at home then to Northwestern last week. James Franklin's out of a job. Of course, his record against top 15 or top 10 or top 5 teams, abysmal. So James Franklin gets ushered out midway through this year, you lead into the Iowa game, and they got a backup quarterback in Ethan Grunkmeyer. Drew Aller out for the year in his career. So talk to us today on Tuesday where this game is for Saturday on the point spread and the over-under, where Iowa's now gone from the underdog to the favorite. Wild times, Mike, in the last 4 days.
Yeah, the look ahead on this game was Penn State by 17.5. And now you've gone almost 3 touchdowns. Iowa's favored by a field goal. But the performance, there's a combination of things. The performance of Penn State, not so much against Oregon, but the mind-numbing loss to UCLA, who, by the way, looks like all of a sudden they got a new coach and they're a legitimate team. I mean, they trounced Michigan State. I've been high on Maryland all year. Maryland's got to go there now to the Rose Bowl to play. The UCLA could be a tough out now for teams. Aller getting hurt obviously is a big concern for Penn State. We've all felt he was very overrated. And in fact, why did Franklin try to throw the ball from the 20 in the last minute against Notre Dame? They could have went to overtime. They'd have been a big favorite to get to the national title game. Now he gets fired, and Iowa's 3. I'm going to throw another 4th factor in here for you. And that's the performance of Indiana at Oregon. Indiana dominated Oregon in Eugene. So that really flatters Iowa's loss to Indiana. That was a toss-up game the whole way. Indiana made a play with 2 minutes to go, right? That was the difference in the game. Mendoza made a pass under pressure. The kid broke the in route for a touchdown. Otherwise, that was a coin flip the entire way. I had the volume on the Texas OU game in the first half at Bar Canada at the D. The game was unwatchable, right? And I noticed a large crowd watching the Indiana Oregon game. So I flipped volume and we went with CBS and Gary Danielson and Nestler for the second. Gary Danielson must have said 4 times how much better Kurt Ferentz and Parker and that defense played against Indiana than Dan Lanning's defense did. Didn't he learn anything from Ferentz? Didn't he learn anything? You've got to attack this offense, put pressure. You can't just sit back and let them pick you apart. And they did. That bully, Kurt Cignetti's a bully. Let's not get around that. He is a bully, but he's a bully who can coach. And his team went into Outson and bullied Oregon. This is a legitimate top 5 team, and good luck to Indiana. But it bodes very well for Iowa. It bodes very well. And if you'd have told me off the course of the Cyhawk game which team would have a better year, I think everybody would have said it's obviously Iowa State. You'd much rather be in Ferentz's position than Matt Campbell's right now.
Oh, absolutely. Iowa State going into their second bye week wounded. I'm really glad you gave us some more context on Penn State. You're right, in that Notre Dame game last year in the CFP. James Franklin, from here to here, Mike, from the ceiling or from the penthouse to the basement in a finger snap, and how the mighty have crumbled. But really glad to hear you say that about Indiana because, truthfully, Mike, if Iowa wins out, they could be a CFP team. Now, I know I'm asking a lot because they got to play USC. They still got to play, Penn State and Oregon. Luckily, those 2 games are at home, then they go to SC. But other than that, they've got some pretty favorable home games. But the intriguing thing is that Indiana game they had, the Iowa State game they had, 1 possession here or there, twist and turn. And a lot of teams can say that, I know, and I get that, Mike. But it is so great to talk to you because I love the twists and turns of the college football season, especially now with the Hawkeyes. Want to remind our viewers again, Mike, about the plays on the sides or the prop bets for individual players in the NFL. TJ Hawkinson now feeling it for the Vikings. Laporta now catching touchdowns again, finally, for the Lions. George Kittle should be back for the Niners in the next week or two, finally getting healthy. A chance to play those sides, Mike. Remind our viewers, if you would, for us, please.
Absolutely. On the CBS Sports app in Iowa, you're going to get your quarterback, your running back, your top 2 wide receivers, and your top 1 or 2 tight ends, depending on how much they're featured. And you're going to get it for those, especially number of receptions over under, number of receiving yards over under, anytime touchdown, yes, no, first touchdown, yes, no. So you get to bet all of those props are available on every NFL game and a lot of college football games as well.
Mike, always a pleasure. I can't wait to reconnect with you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy picking up your kids right now from school, so thank you very much. It's always great to see you. Always an informative and fun conversation. Thank you, my friend.
Dave, it's a pleasure talking to you anytime.
Thank you, and likewise to you. There he is, Northeast Iowa native, as am I, and most of you viewing. Mike Palm, VP of Operations at Circus Sports and circusports.com. I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. Thanks also to Sean Bock and my production partners at BetterEdge and BetterEdge.com, Greg Kajewski and James Stiles. For Hawkeye, I'm Dave O'Hara. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you.